I'm lived my whole life in California. Grew up in Southern California, about 10 miles north of the border. I migrated to Northern California in 1970 to go to college and have been up here ever since. I started after a couple of years doing other things. I started in the freight transportation business in 1978. And since then, I've been in LTL and truckload, trucking, air freight, warehousing, rail intermodal. I just celebrated 10 years after being out of the business for a while, 10 years with US One. Under my current responsibilities, I'm not what I consider in the line management group. I report to a couple of VPs and the president of the company. And right now, my main responsibilities are to work with a small group of our agents out here in the West that I manage from a small home office here in Concord, California. I'm also looking at other markets that are potential for our company to expand into. And right now, hemp is one of the primary things that we're looking at and doing some networking with. I've been really blessed to work with a company that is full of folks who are all younger than me. They're all faster. They're more tech savvy. And so they keep me in a position where I've got to run real hard to keep up. I think I told you before I came on, when I went to work for Mike and his previous partner, I told him I wanted this to be the last full-time job I ever had. And it's turned out to be that way. So I intend to hang around and do this as long as they'll have me. So I guess that's kind of enough about me. That's quick, but at least you know where I'm from. And structure-wise, US One Logistics is headquartered in Ponte, Florida. They are a subsidiary of US One Industries, headquartered in Valparaiso, Indiana. And I work from a home office out here in the West in Concord, California, which is about 20 miles east of Oakland. So that's me.
So talk to me a little bit about, over and over again, we hear about the supply chain and the supply chain management and transportation costs and how much it's impacted not just our industry, but industries in general. Can you talk a little bit about how does it work for you as a broker of freight and transportation? And what are you seeing as real challenges that you guys have been able to overcome as a service to your clients and your customers?
Okay, well, thank you for a good question, actually. Well, first of all, US One Logistics, the company I'm representing when I'm on the floor at the expo, we are a provider of logistics services primarily in the areas of trucking and freight brokerage. On the truck side, most of our truck traffic has either prior or subsequent movement by railroad or steamship. So in other words, a commercial zone drayage operation. We do have some over-the-road operations of our own. In terms of where we sit in providing potential service to the hemp industry, Mandy, that's going to be from the freight brokerage side. Our freight brokerage authorities throughout North America. And there are a lot of challenges, but I've been doing brokerage since about 1981. And the opportunities, I think, have really never been better in the brokerage. And I think a lot of what's going on right now is going to push people our direction. I don't think it's quite as bad as people seem to say it is right now. And in fact, when you and I talked earlier, I mentioned that I was on the floor at the NOCO expo back in March, and I was just going around shaking as many hands as I could. And I shook hands with a guy. I think he's in the wood business, hempwood business.
Yeah.
And he said, "Man, I hear you guys got a lot of problems. Somebody told me there's an 80,000 driver shortage in the trucking industry." And if I hadn't heard that question, I would have really had no intention of putting it on my list of topics. And I'll kind of get to that as we go through this, because generally the effects of that statement and that belief out there are good for us on the brokerage side. And I'll try to explain that as we go through this. For our company, we provide those services through a nationwide network of agencies. And so we don't own terminals. We don't own trucks. We recruit and retain independently owned and operated agencies. Now, I know you met my coworker at the at the hemp show, Olivia Wolf. Olivia is one of our bright young agents. So we've had a lot of fun teaming up on this. And just as an example, our agents will generate anywhere from $1 million gross revenue in a year up to upwards of 45, 50, providing a variety of brokerage and trucking services. They come to us because we provide them with administrative support that would generally cost more to get on their own, or it would be such a distraction for somebody running a small business that they wouldn't have time to do what they're good at. Most of our agents are really effective entrepreneurs. We provide them with the legal operating authority. We provide them with insurance. We provide them with IT support, with safety programs, and all of that stuff is designed to keep them legal, safe, and solvent. And it leaves them really with one thing to do, and that's to go out and develop and manage business relationships and run the day-to-day operation. So we're approaching the hemp world from the standpoint of freight brokerage. And, as examples, a couple of the markets we're in right now, we do move a lot of freight and brokerage in the beverage and grocery trade. We've got packaged goods. We do business with the U.S. government. So we move a variety of types of freight. I have to say, up until recently, hemp wasn't one of them, but here we are. So, and that's been kind of an interesting last couple of years trying to crack that business. My timing wasn't all that great with COVID.
No, I can't imagine. Okay, so when we look at what's moving in the hemp industry, right? Can you talk a little bit about what is, and there's a lot of discussion right now about material only moving a certain distance due to cost of transportation and remaining competitive. Can you talk a little bit about what you're seeing and then maybe what we anticipate for freight needs in the industry?
Sure. I had a figure in mind. I don't know if I saw it on your website or somewhere else. The projection for how big the hemp industry is going to grow. And I want to say $20 billion by 2030 or something like that. Is that the wrong number or the right number?
I actually don't know. I look at acreage, when we look at like scale of acreage and tons there.
Well, the reason I asked that, what transportation looks like in the hemp industry right now is it's not going to look anything like this in 3 years or 5 years or 10 years. If the projections are true, I talked to an awful lot of people on that floor in Colorado, and one of the things they're concerned with is the distance between the field where the raw material is and to the processing plant, and from the processing facility to their customer, who's either going to produce something out of it or then sell it to somebody else who's going to sell it to their end user. And, that's not common throughout transportation, but it's new to a lot of people in the hemp world. So the only thing I can say is we're concerned about the distance just because, that's going to drive who we're looking for to handle the freight. And I'll after we talk about, the networking foray into hemp here, and we talk specifically about some of what a broker does, I can kind of lay that out for you. But I've had a few people tell me that their goal down the road for this industry is that nothing should have to be shipped longer than about 500 to 600 miles. So that's, roughly, if I pick it up this morning, I can probably get it 500 miles tonight, or I'll get it there the next morning, which is great in terms of your traceability and all that, because I'm going overnight. And if you're moving it with us right now, Olivia is probably going to be on the phone with that driver more times than the driver wants to hear. But one thing she'll know is when that customer calls her, whether it's our shipper or the consignee that's waiting on her, she's not going to have to say, I'm going to get back to you. So that's kind of how we're putting together the marketing effort. It doesn't make a difference to us whether it moves 500 miles or 2,000 miles. But as this industry evolves, I think there will be a lot of shorter hauls. The only thing that would make me change that comment is that everybody knows about the potential of the plant. Nobody knows which market's going to take off first. Are we suddenly going to see hardwood floors in every luxury home in the U.S.? All right, I lost you again. I'm not here. I'd love to talk to you, but I can't hear you.
I wasn't saying anything. Just said right.
I got you
I'm
back
nodding.
now.
I'm agreeing.
I just don't want you to leave me.
Sound in the background. No, you're good. I was trying to keep the sound in the background down.
So, it is wood going to take off? Am I going to be sitting here in Northern California in 10 years looking at a neighborhood that's got half a dozen hemp homes in it? That changes the flow, because as you know, in your association, it's legal federally. Some states are making it easy for the hemp business to grow, and some states, mine included, sometimes aren't as friendly as I'd like to see them be. So, length of haul is an issue, but it's not insurmountable. And if I was somebody that was in the hemp business, I would grow my business how most effectively I can grow it to build profit and make it into a profitable business. And I wouldn't really, long term, I wouldn't worry about how far the freight has to move, because if you're doing everything else right, that'll take care of itself. And you really won't worry about whether we're taking it 1,000 miles for you or 500 miles for you. And certainly within reason, the trucks will be there.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's, and interrupt anytime you want. I was going to talk a little bit about our initial visit into the hemp world.
Yeah, I have a question for you real quick. You kind of touched on this a little bit, but I'd like to dive in a little more. What are some of the challenges as a business owner in the hemp industry that I will or that you see people running into by trying to manage the freight in-house compared to outsourcing some of that? What are some real...
Yeah, I was actually hoping you'd ask something like that. I'm certainly not going to sit here and tell a farmer or a scientist or an entrepreneur in the hemp world what I think they ought to do. That said, even though it'll sound a bit self-serving, one of the things we try to do, and I had it on my notes to talk about, I gave up selling a long time ago. I don't sell people anymore. If I can walk that floor and get somebody to have an honest 15 or 20 minute conversation with me, we'll figure out if there's a next step to take, and we'll figure out when and how we ought to take it. And if there isn't a legitimate next step, we'll shake hands and we've both met a new networking contact. So that said, if I'm in the hemp business and the freight is distracting me because I'm a professional farmer or because I'm a processor, I think what you have to do is spend time trying to meet enough people so you can figure out who you can trust. You do that with your own employees on the farm or in the plant. Try to build that freight network beyond transactional business, so that, whether it's one load at a time, 1 month at a time, or 1 year at a time, or whatever it is, so that you're building a relationship rather than, like a store where you go in and buy a can of soda every day on your way home from work. You actually move beyond transactional to, and we've had it a couple of times, where if you were a shipper and you were one of my big accounts, I can guarantee you, the longer we do business, the more chances are there's going to be that one load somewhere that just goes haywire. And, my goal in life is not to have Mandy pick up the phone and call me and say, Chris, you got a real hell of a problem here, get it fixed. What I'd like to hear is Mandy call up and say, Chris, we got a problem. How are we going to work together to fit? And that's not easy to do, but that means we've reached a level of trust. And, we walked into this thing in the middle of COVID. I was invisible for 2 years because I couldn't go anywhere. That was a real learning experience. I didn't get out to actually see somebody in person until late, was it 2020? So, and here we are. And again, I'm very fortunate to work for people who have allowed me the opportunity to go out and explore something that I believed in. I've been looking at this industry since about 2018, 2019. I won't say I was smart. I would just say, fortunate for me, I stayed out of the initial CBD gold rush. And, God bless some of those people, but I didn't know enough to know whether the CBD market was for us. But I knew I didn't know enough to go to my upstream management and say, I really feel strongly about this. But I didn't know enough to have somebody say, Chris, take some of your time that we're paying you for and go out and take a look, So it took me a while.
What is it about hemp, Chris, for you? I mean, because you mentioned a number of things like the increased volume, the number of products that are going to come on market. And I look at this as business opportunity. What for you really was your aha moment in hemp?
Some of my adult kids would probably say, you got to be kidding me, Pop. But the more I learned, and I had a farmer straighten me out on this, so I'm going to make the statement. The more I learned about it, the more I really began to feel that this was a save the world kind of plant. And it was earth shaking for me. I do believe in protecting our environment, but I would never have called myself a zealot. But the more I learned about what you could do, and I've heard the legends, I'm kind of a history buff. I know about the Betsy Ross flag is supposedly made from hemp. And I don't, if that's true, fine. If it's a legend, fine. I do know this. The U.S. government came to thousands of farmers in this country during World War II and gave them the product and asked them to farm hemp because they did not have a way to put uniforms and tents around soldiers that they had sent over to fight in World War II. And the farming community came through like gangbusters. And the minute the war was over, the government stepped in and said, okay, this is illegal now, give it all back. So, I know there's a lot of history there, but to me, it was like, if we could get in and there was opportunity to be part of something, this is really going to be a big deal. Now, I sat down with a farmer at NOCO. We had a meeting. We're moving freight for this particular company right now. And she said, Chris, we've had this conversation. And, God bless you. It's a world-saving plant. She said, but I'm going to tell you something. If you can't tell a farmer how much he or she can sell a bushel for or how much yield they can get from their acreage, it's not likely to happen anytime soon. And so I agree with you. It is a business proposition. But for me, Mandy, it goes back to, my approach to selling in the first place. I just don't sell. I didn't, we've got
service. You're very good at listening to what people need and finding a solution versus selling hard.
Well, that's not easy for me. You have to learn that and practice it because I'm going to tell you that my wife and kids will tell you that I enjoy the sound of my voice. And, so you have to learn to. I can't be learning anything if I'm doing all the talk. If I'm on the floor shaking hands with hemp people I've never met, I don't learn a thing while I'm talking. When they tell me about their bushels and their acreage and we're shipping to a customer that doesn't have a loading dock, doesn't have a pallet jack, doesn't have a forklift. And, but darn it, Chris, I got to get the freight there. Can you do anything? And I look at Olivia and she says, well, sure. I'll get it there. And she sets up the rate and moves the freight. That's rewarding for us. And that's really the one that gets you the call back. And a year from now, that's going to be a relationship we're in. And that's kind of where it's at for me. So, anyway, not to ramble as I always do, but I see the transportation as a challenge because nobody that I've talked to has anybody's got a heck of a lot of experience in transportation. There are people out there. We're not the only company, but we're a good one. And there are people out there that you can learn to trust.
Sure. Okay. So I want to talk about some of the challenges within the hemp industry for shipping hemp, hemp specific. And then also, do you think hemp opens up new opportunities to ship products that previously weren't able to be shipped, like bricks, for example, because of the durability or the weight? Does the weight of the hemp change the shipping, that may previously have cost more or less? I'm kind of curious about trying to understand the nuances of hemp compared to other items or materials.
Well, our experience is pretty limited right now. I think on Olivia's load board right now, we've got seed, we've got some insulation, and we've got some herd that's going to go into hemp blocks, hemp brick.
Yeah.
All of that is pretty light, so there's not a weight challenge there. There's a handling challenge because if you're shipping palletized super sacks of herd and they weigh 500 or 800 or 1,000 pounds, and you're going to a brand new customer like we did last week, and we go out to try to get a truck with a lift gate on it, but that's not really that's not going to solve the issue. And the guy we're sending it to is accepting it as at a residence, and he has no equipment. And take a lot of big, strong people to lift that full trailer load of bags off.
That's a great point. That's a great thing.
Now
and that's more, I imagine, like the nuance of being a startup industry compared to our startup businesses that are a lot of R&D compared to those that once we scale to, once
Absolutely.
You're delivering herd by large scale to organizations that then distribute it from their hub, for example.
Absolutely. But frankly, the raw herd in a super sack, to my mind, is the way to ship it. And if I'm going to a customer who's maybe a brand new customer and doesn't have a way to receive that and says, well, geez, can you do it in 40-pound bags or 50-pound bags so I can bring in a couple of unloaders? That's great. But now you got a shipper who's probably a farmer, and you got somebody who's going to receive it who's brand new. And we're excited by delivering that very first load to somebody who's got some customers that want to buy his hemp lots. We just have to kind of catch our breath and work together and figure out a way to help them get it done.
Yeah.
But as it ramps up, we're moving a few shipments. Then pretty soon it'll be a few a week, and pretty soon it's going to be a few a day. And fortunately, we're kind of at the front end of this to where we can learn these things, and we've partnered up with really good people so far. And seed's another heavy one, but that can be handled, and that's gone. Your question about the bricks, you're talking about hempcrete?
Yeah, or just block in general, right? Previously it was my understanding, for example, shipping on train that's what was brought up specifically is, shipping block on train previously wasn't an issue, wasn't something we could do, where now just due to the stability of it or the, reinforced fibers may make it something that can ship differently or.
Well, you can. I think there'll be a play for hemp at some point in the rail intermodal business. Container on flat car, trailer on flat car. Absolutely. I don't know that my vision's good enough to see full 100,000-pound rail car as a product. Although, I don't hear you again.
Get your magic ball out. We need your magic ball.
Well, if the industry gets as big as it's supposed to get, then you're going to have some facilities that are going to possibly have rail spurs, and you'll put 100,000 pounds of something in a rail car and take it.
That's actually something that comes up quite a bit when we look at building scalable facilities and larger facilities.
Absolutely. And
rail.
I look at it and I say, why don't I build a retirement home out of hempcrete and hemp insulation? And be a pioneer instead of living under fiberglass and on top of concrete. It's going to happen. And but I think hempcrete. If somebody offered us a load of hempcrete right now, I think we'd probably look for a flatbed to put it on and strap it down and tarp it, depending on where it was going from or where it was going to. I've got quite a bit of years behind me in the rail intermodal industry. I can see a play there, but remember, you've got a truck on each end to get it to and from the railroad yard. And so I see a play there. Not my business right now, but I see a play there.
And I think it's a ways out, right? That's where we have a long ways, even just like, I don't want to call it elementary, but these nuances of discovering the, load and offtake opportunities, or where are you doing that at a residence where they're building homes compared to a rail, are very different conversations and very different scale.
Absolutely.
But I think reality of where the industry is what you just explained, right? And it's not just, maybe it is, it's not, I shouldn't say it's just transportation, it's in general, right, where the industry is. But in the transportation, it's even back to, figuring out and delivery methods and transportation and what a key role it plays in profitability. Well,
exactly. And I think a lot of the people that we've met and networked with on the, somebody that's farmed soybeans, corn, cotton, whatever. Now they're dedicating some acres to get into this hemp business. They're trying to figure it out too. And, like I said, I've been at this for the most part since 1978. That doesn't really qualify me to walk in and tell somebody how to do it. It does qualify me to walk in and ask questions and learn. And believe me, I'll know if I can provide help. And if I can't, we have to be able to come in and demonstrate that we can provide support, not that we can quote a cheap rate and send you a freight bill. And there's a big difference there. And so I used to, I had a sales training business for a few years. I don't know if I told you that on the,
Wow.
But I did sales training, and the guys that came in for training always had the same thing. I want, teach me better techniques. I want to know how to overcome objections. I want to know how to enjoy cold calls. First of all, nobody enjoys cold calls. I think they're fibbing if they tell you they do. And I wouldn't do it. We start with other things like what's your behavior model and what's your attitude. And I got to where, to make the point, I used to, there's you've heard of the writer Ralph Waldo Emerson, I'm sure. And so he wrote an essay. It's a very short essay. It's called Compensation, Emerson's Essay on Compensation. And in sales circles, it's fairly well known. And I got to where I required everybody to read that before we start the training. And essentially, if you dumb it down, it says, if you want to get something out of life, you first got to be willing to put something in. You got to give. You want to get a friend, you got to be willing to be a friend. And for us to try to come into an industry that is fairly new, but is populated by people that have had a lot of experience in other industries, that's the attitude that we have to have. We're willing to put something in. We're willing to join in. We're willing to learn. And if we get to that point where we're trusted, we will definitely serve to the best of our ability. The great thing for me is that the people are a pretty friendly group.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and I see more and more collaboration, right? They understand, or we're really starting to understand this need for the collaboration and working together. And I feel like what you just went over has been lost. It really goes back to people do business with people they know and like, know and trust.
Absolutely.
Right? And being able to build that trust. And when it impacts our bottom line as heavy as it does, the time, the time on the road, the time spent trying to figure it out on our own, the loss that happens if a truck gets lost or if something happens. And so I think it goes back to having trusted partners that have been able to navigate and understand those relationships and build those relationships with each piece of that role that you play. It just becomes more and more impactful. And I've been a big proponent of, we do not need to be experts in everything that we do, and being able to outsource or work with organizations to take a piece off of our plate increases our bottom line, and it increases our opportunity to scale and grow, and secure that our products or our materials are getting to their locations on time and to our customers on time. That then, generates recurring business. And so,
well, and let's face it, very similar to how you've started and approached trying to grow your organization. Mm-hmm. Very similar, same thing. Yeah. If I can connect people and serve, then let's talk about it. If I can't, God bless you, and we'll throw each other a lead if we get a chance. And
absolutely.
You haven't. I know you've been at it for a little while, but this thing's got people from all over the country in it. So my guess is you're doing something right.
Yes, absolutely. Well, and it's the community, right? I'm super passionate about connecting people. And again, I understand the vertical integration and keeping things in-house, but I really, for years, have said this power of building relationships with people that support us and work together, and people that are doing the same things as us. Yeah. Chris, where I've learned the most is sitting next to somebody that's trying to do something similar to me and say, what works and what doesn't? What did work for you and what didn't? And so this is, again, where I go back to working with organizations like yours and your team. You guys have the network and you've seen it before, and you don't know what you don't know. So being able to lean in and build this relationship. So I have to give credit back. Thank you very much for everything you're doing also. It's awesome.
We're learning it more and more. I've been to so many conventions and expos since 1978. I can't even count. I've enjoyed some of them, and some of them I felt like I drew the short straw, but I was all set. My upstream management had approved me going to the NOCO, Northern Colorado, their expo I guess it would have been 2020. Right.
Yeah.
I was signed up and I was excited as could be. And then, what was it? 10 days before the thing, they had to move it to a virtual event because of COVID. And I thought, well, I'll spend a day, I'll get on it virtual and just see what gives here. I first of all, I was amazed at how fast they converted that thing to virtual and made it work.
Morris and his team are great. They're so
very,
good.
very, very, very slick. And but of course I listened to, a couple hours worth of presentations. And I thought, man, I'm like, well, I really got to go to school. But then I finally made a right decision and I got into the chat room and
Awesome.
I just introduced myself and then I listened. I saw the list of people go up there and I thought, well, if nothing else, they're going to hear from me on LinkedIn. And I had writer's cramp at the end of that day. I had dozens and dozens of names, many of whom within a week or so, they're doing the same thing. They're stuck virtual. I've had conversations with a lot of those people over the last year or so, but that was, it's hard. It's a little bit more challenging when you're the new guy and the next step, let's try to get connected somehow. Let's schedule a phone conversation. But there were an awful lot of people that were really open to it that, were just as interested, probably wondering why is a freight and logistics guy coming to hear about hemp people. And so that's really where it started was 2020 at NOCO. And then when things began to loosen up a little bit, there was a small builder show over in Longmont last year in August. And then there was the bigger one, a really nice one down in Austin last October.
Yeah.
And I met a number of people who I'd been communicating with online or by phone. And that kind of led to some of those conversations to where when you show up at the next one, you've got some meetings scheduled. You've got some people that I'm going to look for you on the floor. I don't know if you remember, I had joined your group and just to show you how it works with this group of people. So Olivia and I got there the afternoon before and I said, let's go over to the expo floor, see who's setting up, see if we can get some of our materials. We'll hit it running tomorrow morning. We bumped into you in the hallway. You were setting up your booth and we stopped you and introduced ourselves. But I had, as we were walking up that long walkway, we saw a gentleman with two big duffel bags on wheels dragging them. And he had another big bag hanging over his shoulders and he's just trudging up the hallway. And we stopped and said, gee, can we help you? We're going that direction. He said, sure. And he gave me one of the heavy bags. He gave Olivia one of the bags. And off we went. And I said, well, we're going up to that big sign that says Expo. He says, me too. I said, oh, okay. Are you in the hemp business? Yes, I am. I said, well, where are you from? He says, Santa Cruz, California. And I stopped. It's about an hour and a half from here. And I said, Santa Cruz, California. I was at an art and wine festival 15 years ago. And I bought a hemp denim shirt from a company called Dash Hemp in Santa Cruz. And he stopped and looked at, where I'm going. He stopped and looked up at me and he says, nice to meet you. I'm Richard Dash. And I thought, man, oh man, good entree. Wonderful guy. But everybody we've met's been generous with their time and very willing. If we make them comfortable, we've had a number of them that said, hey, I wish you well, but I'm not interested or I don't have a need. And that's good too. A year from now, 2 years from now, they may have a need and we're still going to be around. So, but it's been, the in-person part of this has been really, really rewarding so far. So
there's definitely, like I said, that shift back to doing business with people we know and trust, being able to build that. And the industry is small, right? Referrals move very quickly in this industry. And so that's been very powerful as well.
It seems to be word gets around, which is a good thing, but it means you better do what you say you're going to do. Small industry now, Mandy, but going to be very big,
Yes. Well, and in every facet, right? You're going to be moving things that you wouldn't have thought had hemp in them to find out that they do. And so That's what gets pretty exciting is this isn't just a new product. It's putting our materials into all the existing products to create more sustainability and longevity and so forth. Okay, so I want to real quick go back to what we kind of talked about earlier about this trucking shortage or truck driver shortage.
Okay.
Right. And kind of what that looks like and solutions or how we can anticipate as businesses that will need transportation how does this affect us, and what do we look at? And then I also I have not had to deal with transportation, right? And so I'm not very clear about what to expect for calculating cost. Just in general, what are some things that maybe business owners don't take into consideration or need to be sure they're considering when they're planning to utilize companies?
Okay. And then I want to squeeze in there. I want to squeeze in just a little bit when I'm talking about trucking, kind of how a broker works and what we do.
Exactly. Yep.
But a couple things about that, when I sent that to you, the 80,000 shortage of 80,000 truck driver positions, that really happened because somebody I met on the floor when I introduced myself said what company it's from. He said, "Oh, you guys got real problems." I said, I didn't know you knew my problems, but what are you talking about? And he said, "Well, you're short 80,000 drivers." And, truthfully, Mandy, that's really in our wheelhouse. Okay. And I'm not a big numbers guy. I'll share a few with you and then tell you what I mean. The trucking industry, I think this is 2021. Don't quote me on that. It might be 2020. It was about a $750 billion market. Okay. The brokerage part of that is 20%. Okay. So the niche that we are operating in when we provide service to the hemp industry comes into that 20% of that overall number. There are currently 900,000 legally operating trucking authorities in the U.S. Okay, so it's a big market, but here's the kicker: 91.5% of that 900,000 operating authorities have 5 trucks or fewer. So what you have is there's an industry here that's not dominated by anybody. No dominant player handles any more than 6 or 7% of this market. Okay, so it's extremely fragmented, much so than a lot of industries. So
even more of a need for somebody with experience and understanding those relationships. Like this just goes back to like.
Well, yeah, I mean the asset carriers. I meet shippers who say I prefer not to do business with a broker, Chris. I prefer to do business with an asset-based carrier. There's an element of they believe that gives them more control over the transaction. I'm fine with that. I think we can demonstrate that's not true, but I don't fight that statement. But I can tell you that the largest fleets out there in those asset-based carriers own about anywhere from 14,000 to about 25,000 trucks. Okay, right now, US One Logistics in our brokerage division, we've got about 15,000 trucks signed up that haul freight under contract for us. Now, I'm not giving you that number to say we're a big carrier. I'm saying we know what we have to do to get access to that 91.5% that are out there with 1 to 5 trucks. There's only 2.5% of that number that have over 20 trucks. So there's a lot of small carriers out there that don't have a sales force that might directly know 1 or 2 accounts and rely on brokers to fill their trucks when they're empty. And
this goes both ways, not just for us that are shipping, but for all of those companies out there that have that asset.
Right.
This is, yeah.
And the 80,000 figure that you hear through the American Trucking Associations and through other sources, that number relates to the large asset-based carriers. And it has to do with how many of their units that they're paying for, their financing, are sitting at the terminal empty that they don't have a driver in. And, the way the market's gone the last couple of years, I would say that we have a capacity shortage or a freight glut, more freight than there is trucks to put it in. But the freight market is you and me and shippers and receivers, people who provide the service. Okay. The freight market can't have a shortage of drivers. Large fleets can have that. And it sounds like I'm cutting hairs, but I'm not. It's a big difference. So that I won't say that's a myth. It's out there. It's just not the business we're in. In terms of the hemp people and their concerns, I don't see where that plays unless they want to go out and find the largest truckers in the country and they've determined that that's the best way to do their business. And we happen to work very well in a niche that says, I think we have a way to go that works pretty good. The broker is, we kind of, in the old world, I used to say we're a travel agent for freight. I look for an empty truck. I find out where he wants to go. I look for a shipper that's going in that general direction. So I'm a buyer of truck service. I'm a seller of truck service. And hopefully, if I know what I'm doing in between, I put a nickel on top for me, and then we manage the transaction. And so there's always going to be a shortage of drivers in the asset-based carrier business. A lot of the trucks that we broker to are what we call owner operators, and they own their rig, or they own 2 or 3 or 4 rigs and have a couple of drivers of their own. They call themselves a small fleet. We're vetting new trucks every single day. The last time I checked on that number a year or so back, it was about 12,000. We're at about 15,000 now. Let me clarify. That doesn't mean every single day they're hauling a load of freight for us. What it means is they've been approved for operating authority, for insurance, for safety record. So we know if we put your freight in it, they've been vetted and should be able to do the job. And the ones that do a good job, what they get from us is a company that pays its bills promptly, and a bunch of agents out there who will say, wait a minute, I found a good trucker. I'm going to keep that person as one of my contacts because they did a good job, and I want to give them more freight. Olivia did that just last week. We had a real challenging load on the hemp side. She found a trucker that moved things around, made the effort to pick up this load. The very next load she had, the next day she called the guy back and said, tell you what, this one's a little bit easier. Do you want that one too? And they said, absolutely. And I guarantee you, she and that trucker have started a relationship. So that's kind of how it works. It's the same as when we're trying to, I'm not telling hemp people they shouldn't worry about finding trucks. They should, but they just need to find somebody they can trust to find the right truck for them. And it's a right place at the right time kind of thing. It's a wonderful game of chess, and we enjoy playing it. And when business is up, it's challenging. Right now, the business is starting to crater. Business levels are really dropping off right now. Some of the people in the hemp world will be happy because that means equipment's a little bit more available. It also means the rates are about $1 a mile cheaper than they were in May of last year. So rates are down a little bit. Competition kind of keeps its eye on us in the brokerage business. It doesn't really allow us to make any bigger margins because there's a lot of options out there and it's very competitive. And that's a big number and we hear about it all the time. It just isn't our number.
Okay. So I want to give a shout out to what you guys are doing. Can you real quick, we only have about 15 minutes and I want to give a shout out too for our next events and some of our sponsors, but talk a little bit about your team. You mentioned Olivia, you mentioned the benefits and how excited you were about coming on. What about this team really gives this industry stability, right?
Well, I'll speak for our team. We maintain a pretty lean corporate staff down in Ponte Vedra, Florida.
Okay.
The whole concept is teamwork. It's I don't know if collegial is the right word, but the atmosphere is such that if you're busy and need help with what you're doing and I've got time, let me help. We maintain a safety department, a corporate safety department down in Atlanta, Georgia, that is all over the latest safety trends in trucking. And they run our, when we go to sign up a new carrier, we give them a link. It's all done electronically. They monitor it. And once we have everything intact that we need, we have a lady down there that will then give us a code that says we're authorized to load the truck. We don't dare load the truck before we're cleared. That's a no-no. But so it's a very responsive group. And as I mentioned, and I joke about it with them, but it's really a true thing. We have a lot of young people who are in the prime of their career in this business. And so nobody waits around to do something. Everybody's ready to go and grow and work hard. And that's a good thing. And on top of that, from my standpoint, at this point in my career, Mandy, just as important is I work for a corporate management group and a parent company management group that is all about entrepreneurialism. And it's, I walk into my boss's office in Florida a year back with an idea. And, I said, I've got this vision that this industry called hemp, I think there's something we need to be in. And Of course, I'm from California. He looks at me and says, hemp, huh? What are you really talking about? And I said, no, I'm talking hemp, industrial hemp here. But the point being that they're very willing to look at new ideas and support them with time and finance if they're justified. The parent company, same thing. Come to us with an idea, make your point, prove your point. So from my standpoint, I'm 3,000 miles away from the corporate office. I feel like they're all sitting here with me when I'm at my day. When I'm on the road, somebody's always checking in. I think it's kind of why when I started, I told my boss that I had intended for this to be the last full-time job I ever had. And I wasn't sure I'd make 10 years, but I have. And now it's going to be on them. They're just going to have to push me out.
And now it gets exciting. You've got this great new opportunity ahead of us that you really get to dive into with a whole new set of entrepreneurs. And really the innovative piece is what gets so exciting, that entrepreneurship, to support the entrepreneurs. And
you were talking about that before. I mean, you and I are going to be talking in 2 or 3 years, maybe less, about some product that's made with hemp that we can't even imagine right now because somebody smarter than us is going to figure it out.
We just got to get it to our kids. I say all the time, let's just put it in our kids' hands.
We'll give them the clean dirt and the clean houses. Exactly.
That's awesome. Awesome. Any highlights or anybody else that you've been working with, Chris, that's really doing things right in our industry? Who should we be looking to, and who should we really be connecting with?
You talking about hemp companies or other people from other industries?
Both. Yes.
Well, I mean, I should have asked permission to name some of the people we're doing business with. I think we have an opportunity on the food side of hemp.
Yes.
And we've gotten to know Carla Boyd quite a bit. And I am really rooting for that company. She's starting to crack the California market. And we do a lot of refrigerated, both LTL and truckload, frozen and chilled. She had us look at one thing going up into Canada. It wasn't a good competitive lane for us, but I think there's a lot of opportunity in foodstuffs. Every time I talk to somebody in the food business, I ask them, why can I put hemp hearts in my morning protein shake? But if I had a goat, I couldn't go out and feed hemp to the goat because it's not legal yet, unless they've changed that. And it's the craziest thing, but I think food's going to blow up.
Yeah.
And I think that company is doing it right.
I'm excited. I love Carla. Carla actually won an award at NOCO, which is pretty exciting. She's one of the first ladies that I got to meet in this industry. She was introduced to me through somebody else, Chris Morwood, actually. But I would love to figure out a way to get her burgers shipped into Utah.
Right. Well, and then I've met Greg Wilson, the hardwood guy. Mm-hmm. We don't do business with him, but I'm going to tell you, he's a very, very sharp guy. And every time I shake his hand and spend 20 minutes, I learn something. And one of the things I feel best about with him is I made him comfortable enough to say, Chris, we don't have a need for you right now. And I just said, Greg, I'm not going anywhere. I'll be around when the time's right. We'll talk again. He's I consider him a real pioneer.
Yeah.
And
he's done such a great job at laying foundation for both himself and the industry. So. Yes, done a great job.
When we see the lady from Flipper Flop putting some of his wood in her houses out here in Southern California, and you drive into BMW Beverly Hills and all the cabinetry's been redone with hempwood, it's coming.
It's pretty exciting. I was at a show just this last weekend.
And of course, the South Bend people, I have to. They've been really good to us, and I think that's going to be a growing and long-term relationship. And I need to figure out a way to get there for that open house.
Well, let's do it. I would love to connect there as well.
Good.
Yes, absolutely. Well, if there's anything else, do you have anything else you want to add before we close off? We have just a couple of minutes.
I just want to thank you for the time. This has been a lot of fun. Absolutely. It went by quickly, and it's a privilege for us. We appreciate the opportunity. We'll do it again anytime, and I'm sure we'll talk before the open house or the show in Nashville, but if not, I'll see you there.
Absolutely. How do people get in touch with you, Chris? If somebody wants to get in touch or work with you guys, what's the best way for them to reach out?
They can catch me on LinkedIn.
Okay.
Or they can catch me at C Kinsel at us1logistics.com. That's really the two best ways.
Okay.
And those I'm on all the time. I'll be glad to respond promptly.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you everybody that chimed in today. We had a ton of comments from all around the globe. It's exciting to see everybody that's on. Excuse me. And so if you guys need anything, please don't hesitate to reach out. We'd love to have you involved. Oh, I totally forgot. We have an incredible donor that donated to our fiber variety trials and our research through Friends of Hemp and GHA, matching funds. And so we've got a pretty significant match opportunity. So if you guys are in a position to donate or sponsor, now our money goes twice as far. Your donation will double and go twice as far. It's a dollar for dollar match, which is very exciting. And so, gives us sponsor opportunity, an opportunity to really get data out. Our sponsors are getting access to data throughout all of our trials, really being educated and having basically the full report by the end of the year, significantly further in advance. I think it's like 5 or 6 months in advance from when we'll publish it. So if you guys are looking through a company or as a company to get involved with seed trials or with anything that we're doing, don't hesitate to holler and reach out. There's lots of great opportunities. So Chris, other than that, thank you very, very much. Thank you to your team for everything you guys are doing. If you want to send me over logos and stuff, I would love to highlight you as well in a newsletter. We've got a big newsletter going out. I did see something go out yesterday, Monday, that just kind of highlighted what you were doing, but I would love to send something further as well. So send it over.
Thanks,
awesome.
Mandy. Be good.
Well, thank you guys. I really appreciate everybody joining in today. And we will see you then on Thursday morning, same time, live. And we'll go from there.
Thank you much.
Okay. Talk later. See ya.